AITA for being the reason my grandparents refused to help my dad anymore and laughing when he and his wife complained about it. My mom died when I 16 meters was 7. She left me an inheritance that my dad was put in charge of. The money was supposed to be for my future and nobody was supposed to touch it unless I really needed it, and it was pretty specific. I read through it 5 months ago when shit went down. My dad got married again when I was 10 and he has an 8-year-old stepdaughter and now a 4-year-old daughter with his wife Louise. My half-sister was diagnosed with a rare condition when she was 2. It was always clear something was wrong, but they had a really hard time figuring out what it was. Doctors would say she'd be fine when she was older. This condition isn't life-threatening, like she won't die from it, but it could potentially leave her permanently disabled in a bad way. A few months ago they found out about this, hard to get into treatment for it. But it was expensive. There was ways to get help paying for it, but that takes longer. So my dad decided he would use the inheritance mom left me to pay for it. He tried asking me, but he was going to do it anyway, and when I said no he told me as much. Then he shamed me for saying no, for putting college before the health of my half-sister. Louise was in the room with us, but she wasn't talking before I said no. She asked me how I could look at my half-sister at the life she will have if we don't do something and say no. I told my dad I would never forgive him if he took the money. After I read her will grandparents had a copy, I brought up the fact it was only for my needs, it could be spent before. He told me mom was dead and he hoped she'd understand. I told him I never would. He told me I'd understand when I'm older. I told him I hated him, and I told Louise she better never speak to me again because I found it disgusting she'd encourage stealing from me and taking my mom's money. I told my grandparents what dad did. They're my mom's parents but had stayed friendly with dad and there were times they would help him. They shared stuff with him all the time and grandpa would look at dad's car for free if anything was wrong. That all stopped when I told them. Dad couldn't figure out why until he confronted them about it last week. They told him he had some nerve stealing from me, taking their daughter's money and spending it on his child. My dad was mad they didn't understand and support his decision. He confronted me about it and complained about what I did. I laughed and told him I had warned him I would never forgive him for it. He asked how I got to be so heartless and selfish. I told him I would never forget what he did. AITA? Nestor 1953 says, that was your money, not your dad's money. It might have been stolen from you in a good cause, but it was stolen from you, and that's illegal. Please have your grandparents find you a lawyer. Your dad is going to have to pay you back what he took from you. You don't get to steal from your kid. Talk with a lawyer. Get your money back. Your stepsister has already benefited from it, now it's time for your dad to find a way to repay you. Every cent. Comfortable C 2454 says, NTA I told my grandparents what dad did. They're my mom's parents but had stayed friendly with dad and there were times they would help him. They shared stuff with him all the time and grandpa would look at dad's car for free if anything was wrong. That all stopped when I told them. Dad couldn't figure out why until he confronted them about it last week. They told him he had some nerve stealing from me, taking their daughter's money and spending it on his child. My dad was mad they didn't understand and support his decision. He confronted me about it and complained about what I did. I laughed and told him I had warned him I would never forgive him for it. He asked how I got to be so heartless and selfish. I told him I would never forget what he did. I feel for your half-sister, but your dad stole from you to take care of his child. Your maternal grandparents are rightly PO'd at your dad. Would it be possible for you to go live with your maternal grandparents and get away from your dad and his second family? Edit. Thanks for the awards, guys. And please update when you can. Aggravating. Thanks. 80 says, your dad's feelings and needs are not a lawful reason to ignore a will. He's broken the law, and while it may end up more expensive than the inheritance in question to pursue it, it's an avenue you can take. At the very least, your father should be made very aware that speaking to your grandparents is the kindest thing you could have done for him, because the legal options which are likely very open to you still would have been far worse. He has no right to speak for the dead either. That will was your mother's final word on her estate. If she wanted to provide for your father and his future, including new children and partners, she'd have damn well left it for him. Thanks for watching. I love you. Follow Reddit Echoes for more.